It's Pokemon time again, folks, and this time we'll be taking a look at the smash hit mobile game that came out last month, Pokemon Go. Besides, I need a video explaining where I've been for the past month or so anyway. Now, I have talked about the Pokemon series at great length in a number of videos already, so I think the series needs no introduction at this point. So, how did this match made in heaven come about exactly? Pokemon Go was developed by a US-based software company called Niantic Labs, a subsidiary of Google at the time of its founding in 2010. The first game they developed was an experimental location-based MMO game called Ingress in 2012. The game was a science fiction game with a continuous open narrative based on your real-world location using a type of display technology called augmented reality. While the game wasn't necessarily a big hit, it did have a decent amount of followers, and much of the data and locations that were set up for the game were reused to populate the locations for Pokestops and gyms within Pokemon Go. The idea for Pokemon Go came about in early 2014 as Satoru Iwata and Tsunekazu Ishihara collaborated with Google for an April Fool's Day joke called the Pokemon Challenge. The game was simple but super effective enough. It was essentially a temporary Pokemon-themed mini-game in Google Maps that randomly placed Pokemon in real-world locations that allowed you to track down and catch different types of Pokemon. People who managed to complete the challenge within that temporary time frame were given the grand prize of their own fake Google employee card with the title of Pokemon Master. Personally, I think a cash prize would have sufficed. For whatever reason, the joke worked extremely well, as the minigame was initially planned to last until April 3rd. Its popularity extended it for another 5 days, giving players who had previously caught at least 5 Pokemon the opportunity to complete their Pokedex. Impressed by the positive feedback received through the Pokemon Challenge minigame, Nintendo partnered with Google to transform the April Fool's Day joke into a full-fledged mobile game. Unfortunately, development had a couple of setbacks. The first issue was that Niantic left Google around that time to become its own independent software company. The second problem was that Satoru Iwata passed away in July of 2015 due to complications arising from a tumor in his kidney. Despite this, the game's development was pushed forward, and Ishihara dedicated his speech at the game's announcement on September 10, 2015 to Iwata, who had died 2 months earlier. So, on March 4th, 2016, Niantic announced a Japan-exclusive beta test would begin with other countries following suit later on that year. The test came to an end on June 30th, and the game officially launched on July 7th, 2016 for both Android and iOS in North America. Reception to the game was phenomenal, as it quickly dominated top-grossing and free charts for both iOS and Android, even outgrossing apps such as Twitter and Instagram. Along with the game's release, Niantic also announced an add-on for the game called the Pokemon Go Plus. It is supposedly a Bluetooth-enabled device that allows you to capture Pokemon and visit Pokestops without having to look at your phone, thus enabling safer gameplay. Unfortunately, the device is pretty much sold out on most retail websites despite being up for pre-order, and second-handed sites like Craigslist and eBay are selling them from up to $250 from its original $35 asking price. Needless to say, I think I am going to wait on that one. especially since Nintendo has a really bad habit of undersupplying demand for their top-selling products. Any amiibo collector can attest to that. Now that I have talked about the game's development history, let's talk about the gameplay. After logging into the app for the first time, the player creates their avatar. The player can choose the avatar's style, hair, skin, and eye color, and can choose from a limited number of outfits. The problem I have with this is that the choices for outfits and the like are very limited, and I would like to see more options in this regard. After your avatar is created, it is displayed at your current location along with a map of your immediate surroundings. Features on the map include a number of Pokestops and Pokemon gyms that are typically located at various identifiable landmarks, such as public art installations, historical markers, monuments, or other points of interest. As the player travels the real world, the avatar moves along the game's map, in which a variety of different Pokemon species can be found in different areas of the world around you. For example, water-type Pokemon are more commonly found around bodies of water, grass Pokemon are found more commonly in parks or in wooded areas, and certain Pokemon become more common at night. The object of the game is to get you to explore different areas at different times of day to catch Pokemon in the real world. Your mileage may vary, but a lot of the appeal and gameplay of Pokemon Go is determined by your geographical location. But since Pokemon Go is a location-based game, your game experience can vastly differ depending on whether you live in the city, the suburbs, or in rural areas. The gaming experience in Pokemon Go depends on you being around a large group of people. In my experience, the more people there seems to be around, the more often Pokemon will appear. This seems to be a detriment to those living in less populated areas, especially since Pokestops tend to congregate more around populated areas as well. So unless you live in a decent-sized city, chances are that finding a Pokemon you want or any nearby Pokestops seem more and more widespread. That being said, the game's mechanics are vastly different than that of all the other installments in the core Pokemon games, and that will take some getting used to. Despite being a very fun and addicting game, it does have its share of weaknesses, server issues aside. The first problem is that once your avatar is created, the game simply drops you in the middle of it without any basics or tutorial on how the game is played, leaving you to figure out how everything in the game works on your own. Now, I don't particularly like games that hold your hand and escort you with tips and strategies throughout every action in the game. Recent Sonic the Hedgehog games specifically come to mind. But when this game is so vastly different than the core Pokemon games of the last 20 years, I think a tutorial on how the game works is more than called for. A good example is that players of Pokemon Go do not battle wild Pokemon to capture them. During an encounter with a wild Pokemon, the player simply throws a Pokeball at it. If the Pokemon is successfully caught, it will come under the ownership of the player. Factors in the success rate of capture include the right force, the right time, and the type of Pokeball used. Once a Pokemon is captured, Pokemon do not level up through battle experience like in the core games. Oh no! Instead, the player is awarded two types of in-game currencies after catching the Pokemon: candies and Stardust. These are used to level up a Pokemon's combat power, which is a rough measure of how strong your Pokemon currently is. However, each Pokemon evolutionary tree has its own type of candy which are used to evolve or level up that specific Pokemon. Which means if you want to level up your Pidgeotto or evolve it into Pidgeot, get ready to spend some time catching a lot of Pidgeys. Lots and lots of Pidgeys. Players themselves earn experience points for various in-game activities. Players rise in level as they earn experience points, and various game mechanics and items are unlocked as a player levels up. For instance, when a player reaches level 5, the player is able to battle at a Pokemon gym and join one of 3 teams: Valor, Mystic, and Instinct, each being represented by the 3 legendary birds, Moltres, Articuno, and Zapdos. I am not going to lie, when it comes to battling Pokemon in this game, there is much to be desired. Much like the rest of this game, battles themselves are vastly different than that of the core games as well. For instance, they are no longer turn-based and take place in real time. By the way, there is no strategy whatsoever in these battles. It is just mash the screen as quickly as possible and hope you defeat your opponent's Pokemon before he defeats yours. The Pokemon's elemental strengths and weaknesses also take into account, but not by much, and battles are over just as quickly as they are started. Rather anticlimactic, don't you think? Besides, whatever happened to, I don't know, trading Pokemon between other players, battling your friends and neighbors outside of gyms, or even a setup for tournaments for that matter? The game also has its fair share of technical issues. One issue I have with the game is that it requires you to always be online and always have your GPS location enabled in order for it to run. This can be a significant draw on your phone's battery life. During my experiences with this game, my phone's battery would consistently overheat and completely drain itself from a full charge in as little as 2 to 3 hours. And since the game depends on the above requirements to run, it can also run you through your phone's data plan if you are not careful. That is especially the case if your data plan is on a lower tier one. So if you want to be the very best like no one ever was, I hope your phone has a very hefty data plan to go with it. Let's not forget to mention the game is riddled with bugs and server issues. For instance, if you log out or turn the game off for any reason, there is no guarantee you will be let back in to continue your game.
Why doesn't your servers work? Like, explain that to me. With all of Nintendo's money in the world, with all of Niantic's money in the world, with $99 microtransactions in a fucking game, why doesn't the server fucking work? Like, explain that!
I must also note that the game will occasionally freeze as well, and I also ended up finding myself occasionally being booted out of the game's servers, prompting a hard reset and plenty of lost Pokemon.
There he is! Oh my god! I throw my Pokeball, and the fucking thing freezes! The fucking thing freezes! I couldn't catch it! I got that little white spinning Pokeball. It says our fucking server's not responding. I try to log back in. I can't get back in. I ended up sitting down on the fucking ground, waiting for that blast noise to come back up, waiting for the servers to come back up.
With a game this anticipated growing this popular so quickly, with everyone and their grandmother itching to play it, this game will definitely be leading to overloaded servers. This was one of the reasons why the game's release in Japan was delayed. I have also found out that throwing Pokeballs seems to have a varying accuracy window. For example, I have lost so many Pokeballs with a seemingly straightforward toss, only to have the ball randomly careen to the sides and off screen, completely missing the target Pokemon. Other times when I throw a Pokeball, the game will not register it as a hit and become unresponsive by having the Pokeball simply fly or roll off into the background. Now, I have heard that by tapping it a couple of times, you can recover the Pokeball if it misses the Pokemon, but this has never worked for me. If anybody knows a trick to it, please let me know, because I am so sick and tired of paying real-world money for Pokeballs that seem to have a mind of their own. Also, has anybody else experienced a Pokeball thrown at a Pokemon that spontaneously combusts in midair?
This is my latest computer program. It not only runs Windows, it washes them too.
My biggest concern and what angers me the most is that it seems as if Niantic is ignoring the advice and suggestions made on how to improve on the game by the community that this game has built. The primary example of this was that of the footstep tracking mechanic that tells you how far you are from a specific Pokemon in your area. Basically, the fewer footsteps there were under a specific Pokemon listed as nearby, the closer it was to your current location. The problem was that feature of the game crashed not long after the game's release, becoming completely unreliable. After no response from Niantic over the issue, tech-savvy members of the Pokemon Go community began to develop third-party applications such as Pokevision to supplement that broken feature of the game. So, what did Niantic do in response? Rather than taking suggestions on how to improve the feature and following through, Niantic removed that feature from the game entirely and forced third-party Pokemon tracking apps to shut down.
You dicks!
You got that right. In fact, this kind of reminds me of a certain other company that did similar things to this, specifically in regards to the PT fiasco. I believe their name was, Konami? Yeah, look where those guys are now! Pulling stunts like this by ignoring the advice from players, forcing people to play the game by your standards, and punishing people who try to improve on the game's experience when you refuse to fix a problem in your game is the quickest way to drive people away from your game and kill it. I was also angry at this news, and I believe this to the point that literally in post-production of this review, I decided to go back and knock Pokemon Go back from my original rating of 6 out of 10. If Niantic continues pulling stunts like this, I do not care if it has the power of the Pokemon franchise behind it, I will drop this game. Another trait this game shares with most other mobile games is its safety issues, and oh boy does Pokemon Go have its safety issues. Even when the game was only out for about a week, there were already news reports of traffic accidents, people getting robbed, people getting arrested or even shot at for trespassing, and people using locations such as cemeteries and memorial sites to catch Pokemon. Hey look everybody! I caught a coughing at Auschwitz!
And it was awkward for everyone!
Okay, all awkward jokes aside, I actually do agree with the decision not to allow people to play the game at a former Nazi death camp. I too think it is very disrespectful. The issue at hand here is that there are a lot of irresponsible people in this world that will do stupid things with this game. That is pretty much guaranteed. So if you are playing this game, please show some common sense, play it safe, and be aware of your surroundings, and please don't play this thing while driving.
So here's this giant enemy crab.
The last thing I want to talk about is that since Pokemon Go is a mobile game, obviously there are going to be microtransactions. The thing is that when it comes to mobile games, or any game for that matter, I hate microtransactions. Call me a old school gamer, I don't care. But when I buy a game, I want to pay for the complete game up front. None of this day one DLC bullshit or other shady content delivery practices. EA, I am specifically looking at you.
We've got to have money.
The thing is that when it comes to mobile games, most microtransactions are forced either through paywalls or timers that you must wait until they expire or pay real money to get rid of them. Other microtransactions include the pay-to-win type, in which paying customers have a significant advantage over players that don't. In my opinion, payment practices like these are dishonest and exploitative.
I'd buy that for $1.
Why the hell hasn't payment practices like these been made illegal yet? And just because everybody is doing it doesn't mean it's right. Unfortunately, Pokemon Go does have microtransactions as expected from most mobile games, but thankfully they are not invasive to the game's experience. The only time I can think of using it is that if you are catching Pokemon out in the middle of the desert or other rural areas and run out of Pokeballs and are nowhere near a Pokestop to replenish on supplies. It is here where you can simply turn off the game, or you can pay $2 to $9 for up to 200 Pokeballs and continue your game. There are other things you can buy and share with other players, such as lures, egg incubators, and more so, being in a highly populated area is definitely a plus. I am a little wary of lucky eggs in regards to leveling up your avatar, since they increase the amount of experience that you earn, and I hope that experience boost is shareable to nearby players like lures are. If not, then that would bring up concerns of the game taking an unbalanced pay-to-win model up.
Shut up and take my money!
Basically, the microtransactions in this game are thankfully not forced upon you, but considering my experience with mobile games, I think that is pretty rare.
Guess you're right.
But with these weaknesses, does that make Pokemon Go a bad game per se, and you should avoid it at all costs? Hell no! In fact, the game is about as addicting as crack! Yeah, if you pick this game up, be prepared to super glue your phone to your hand. It is that addicting. Despite being a glitchy mess, Pokemon Go is a very fun and addicting game, although there are some aspects of the game I would like to see improved. If Niantic and Nintendo keep adding new features, fix its bugs and server issues, and keep improving on the game, this game could very well be a great game. Hell, the game is already having a lasting impact. For one, this is probably the most immersive fad in a game I have ever seen in my life. It's getting people to come out of their shells and go about the world seeking and bringing people together with a common interest. It's weird that parks where I live that were at one time sitting completely empty or even abandoned are now bustling with people trying to catch the latest Pokemon. It's not just where I live either. The game is getting to the point where daily use is posed to outmatch that of apps such as Twitter and Instagram. That is the universal power of the Pokemon franchise. It has the ability to take all sorts of people from different backgrounds, genders, and personalities, and brings them together with the common goal of collecting and battling these cute and attractive characters, combined with the game's addicting gameplay mechanics. It was proven back in the late 1990s when the Pokemon franchise first made its debut, and it is once again proving itself in 2016. The game's goal from the very beginning, way back in 1996, was to get gamers to go outside and socialize with each other through trading and battling. I feel that this game is the ultimate realization of that goal and how immersive it is, even if it is a little short-sighted in my honest opinion. Keep in mind, this is my opinion of the game at launch. This, of course, means that as the game stands right now, having considered the game's many glitches and server crashes, I am willing to give Pokemon Go a 5 out of 10. So that is my review of the wildly popular mobile game Pokemon Go, and specifically where I've been for the past month or so. Now, I would like to review more video game adaptations from anime, but the easiest way for me to get to do that is to support my Patreon page. So, until next time, this is the American Anime Otaku, signing out. Ow. Like what you see? Then please help support the show by contributing to my Patreon page for special perks, exclusive content, and more.